When we should be progressing and moving toward the future, we have certain politicians that would like to take us backward, especially here at home in Texas. You see, Texas is the test grounds for fascism. Every fascist policy they want to take nationwide, they are trying it out in Texas. Abortion bans, ending DEI programs, book bans, transgender discrimination, and now an attack on public education, a right that is enshrined in our state constitution. Yes, the road to fascism begins in Texas, but I believe so does the road to recovery and redemption. We must prove to our state, our country, even our world, that Texas may be big, but that doesn't mean that we have any room here for hate, bigotry, and especially not fascism. Again, thank you all for taking the time to care, for wanting a better future for our children and for our state. One person alone won't move us forward, but working together, you may be surprised how much we can accomplish. In the words of our next president, Kamala Harris, we aren't going back. So, I'm done now. Without further ado, I am thrilled to announce our first speaker, my personal favorite state representative representing House District 52, James Talarico.
Madam Chair, and thank y'all for having me. I didn't know there were this many Democrats in Wichita Falls. I don't think people around the country realize how close we are to turning Texas blue. Donald Trump won our state by only 5 points in the last presidential election. Ted Cruz won his last race by only 2.5 points in 2018. Texas is the biggest battleground state in the country. And this year, we have an incredible candidate, my friend, Colin Allred. Colin, as y'all may know, played football at Baylor before becoming a voting rights lawyer. And like me, Colin was born to a single mom. As a congressman, he has been fighting every day to give every Texan the chance to chase their version of the American dream. And now, he is running against the worst senator in America. On January 6th, Ted Cruz plotted to overturn the 2020 election and fan the flames of insurrection. During the blackout that killed 700 of our fellow Texans, Ted Cruz hopped on a flight to Cancun, leaving his constituents and his own dog to shiver in the dark. And when Donald Trump called Heidi Cruz ugly, Ted Cruz endorsed him anyway. If Ted Cruz will abandon his wife, his dog, and his country, what makes you think he won't abandon you? Colin Allred will never abandon Texas, and he will never abandon you. Right-wing extremists like Ted Cruz have taken over our state, and it's time to take Texas back. The right-wing extremists who have taken over our state, they're giving Texas a bad name across the country, across the world. I'm an 8th-generation Texan. My family's been here since it was Mexico. And I remember that Texans used to be known for our hospitality. Our nickname is the Friendly State. Friendship is our official state motto. The word Texas comes from the Caddo Native American word for friend. And they didn't use it to describe a friend in their own tribe. They used it to describe a friend in a different tribe. Friendship across lines of difference. Friendship amidst diversity. That's what makes Texas so great. We're this big mashup of all these different people and all these different cultures. Just think about Tejano music. If you're listening to a Selena song, you're hearing Spanish vocal styles from northern Mexico, but you're also hearing polka dance rhythms from Czech and German immigrants. This uniquely Texan ability to welcome new friends, welcome new ideas, has made us one of the most exciting and innovative states in the country. We're the state that put a man on the moon. We're the state that pioneered ranching and energy and computers. We're the state that gave this country Barbara Jordan, Ann Richards, LBJ, and the Great Society. We're the state that put breakfast in a taco. And we are still creating new technologies, new industries, new art. Our own Beyonce just came out with a country album. Ted Cruz and Greg Abbott and Dan Patrick, they don't understand Texas or what makes us great. Shutting down diversity programs at colleges and universities, a total abortion ban, anti-immigrant laws, Christian nationalism. In the words of the great Beyonce Knowles, this ain't Texas. And you know what? I want to talk a little bit about the abortion issue. When Donald Trump overturned Roe v. Wade, Texas Republicans banned abortion even in cases of rape, incest, and threats to the mother's health. Since then, 26,000 Texas women have been forced to give birth to their rapist baby. Infant and maternal mortality have spiked. Pregnant women with life-threatening complications are being told to wait in emergency room parking lots until they go into sepsis. This has never been about life. This has always been about controlling women. In some Texas counties, Republican politicians are banning women from using public highways to travel out of state to get an abortion. Donald Trump is now saying he's going to let red states monitor women's pregnancies. And in their latest platform, the Texas GOP calls for the death penalty for women who get an abortion. Republican extremism is killing women in Texas. It's happening on our watch. And now they are promising to take these deadly policies nationwide. And if they win in November, God help us. You know, outside of abortion, there are probably two things that people around the country have heard about Texas lately. Private school voucher scams and Ken Paxton. And those two things are very much related. So in May of last year, a bipartisan coalition of Democrats and Republicans in the Texas House voted to impeach our corrupt Attorney General. But then just a couple months later, the Texas Senate voted to acquit Ken Paxton on all charges, restoring the most corrupt politician in our state to the office of top cop. What you may not know, though, is that a few weeks before that impeachment trial in the Senate, our Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick, who was supposed to preside impartially over that trial, took $3 million from two of Ken Paxton's billionaire buddies, Tim Dunn and Farris Wilks. Those two billionaire megadonors are the exact same billionaire megadonors who are funding this effort to privatize our public schools. Dunn and Wilks are oil and gas oligarchs from West Texas, but they are also Christian nationalist pastors. Now, for those that have read the New Testament, billionaire pastor sounds like an oxymoron, but on Sunday mornings, these two billionaires are preaching at far-right churches. And they don't preach a theology of universal love like the kind many of us were brought up with. They preach a theology of power and control and domination. They say climate change is God's will. They compare homosexuality to bestiality and pedophilia. They say that only Christians have a right to serve in public office. In fact, they told the former Republican Speaker of the Texas House, Joe Strauss, that he didn't have a right to be Speaker because he's Jewish. I know this term Christian nationalism is new to some of us. My granddad was a Baptist preacher in South Texas, in Laredo, on the complete other end of the state from here. I still go to the same church that I've been attending since I was 2 years old. I'm now in seminary, studying to become a minister myself. My faith means more to me than anything. So let me say this as clearly as I can. There is nothing Christian about Christian nationalism. It is the worship of power, social power, economic power, political power, in the name of Christ. And it is a betrayal of Jesus of Nazareth. Have you ever noticed that it's the politicians who talk the most about being a Christian who are the least Christ-like? You can't call yourself a Christian and deny health care to the sick. You can't call yourself a Christian and cut food stamps for the poor. You can't call yourself a Christian and reject the stranger seeking asylum at our southern border. You can't call yourself a Christian and destroy God's creation with greenhouse gases. And you certainly can't call yourself a Christian and discriminate against your neighbor because of their race, gender, or sexual orientation. I personally know plenty of Hindus, Buddhists, Jews, Muslims, Sikhs, and atheists who are more Christ-like than some of the self-proclaimed Christians who are serving in public office at the state capitol. But the scariest part about Tim Dunn and Farris Wilks is not their toxic theology. It's that they're turning that toxic theology into law. They are spending their fortune undermining democracy in the second largest state in the country. This is the biggest story in American politics, and not enough people are talking about it. So they buy politicians. Half of the Republicans in the Texas House have taken their money. Every single Republican state senator has taken their money. But they also fund this sprawling network of right-wing think tanks and advocacy organizations and media outlets. They are spending their vast resources transforming our beloved Texas into an authoritarian theocracy, right under our nose. So the last thing they want is an honest attorney general. The last thing they want are well-funded public schools that teach the next generation how to think for themselves. Those are obstacles in their way. If you don't have public schools, you don't have a democracy. It is the cornerstone of this American experiment. And that's why they're trying to dismantle them. So in states that have tried these voucher scams, they don't improve student performance, but they do siphon off billions of dollars from our already underfunded public schools. Because that's the point. That's the goal. Voucher scams are part of a coordinated effort by wealthy special interests to destroy public education in this state and across the country. And just like Dan Patrick did their bidding on the Ken Paxton impeachment trial, Greg Abbott did their bidding by calling 4 special legislative sessions last year to try to pass their voucher scheme. But I am proud to report that a bipartisan coalition of Republicans and Democrats in the lower chamber stood strong, stood united, and defeated Greg Abbott's voucher scam. Texans of all stripes have been fending off voucher scams since the first one was proposed in this state in 1957. And for the history buffs in the room, you know that was just 3 years after the Brown versus Board of Education decision came down from the Supreme Court. That first voucher scam was a deliberate attempt to resegregate public schools, to allow white kids to leave newly integrated schools and go to white-only private schools. So these voucher scams have a dark and disturbing history. But every decade they've been brought up, Texans have said no. And that's because Texans love their public schools. It's enshrined in our state's constitution, as our chairwoman said. And there's nothing more Texan than Friday Night Lights. Public schools they're not just academic institutions. They're not just teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic. They bring us together. They're community hubs. Just think about it. In this kind of polarized age, public schools are some of the last places where we come together across those lines of difference. And that's why public schools are a threat to these theocrats from West Texas. I probably wouldn't be standing at this podium in front of all of y'all if it wasn't for public schools. I was born to a single mom who didn't get to go to college. But because of Texas public school teachers, I got to go to the University of Texas at Austin and Harvard University. And I bet there are people in this room who could say the same thing. Raise your hand if you would not be sitting here as the informed, active citizen that you are today if it wasn't for public schools. Yeah, right? This is what's at stake. Not just public education, but our very democracy. So we've defeated voucher scams before, and I am confident with your help that we will defeat them again next year when Greg Abbott brings it up to the Texas Capitol. And so I just want to outline a couple of things outside of public education, because they're not just coming for our schools. They are also coming for our health care. And this is personal to me. When I first ran for office, I almost died. I was a healthy 28-year-old running for the Texas House. And I decided to walk the entire length of my district, 25 miles, all in one day, and hold town halls along the way. About halfway through the walk, I started to feel fatigued and nauseous. I threw up a couple times on the walk, but somehow I finished. I got home, I went to bed, and I slept for 36 hours straight. My parents rushed me to the ER where the nurses checked my blood sugar. A normal blood sugar level is below 100. Mine was 900. I was immediately diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. I was in a state of diabetic ketoacidosis, which leads to coma and death without insulin. After I left the ICU, I went to Walgreens to get my first 30-day supply of insulin, and it cost me $684. I didn't have that kind of money, so I put it on a credit card. Many Texans with diabetes can't afford their insulin. They ration and skip doses, and some of them die because of it. All because Big Pharma has manipulated and monopolized the insulin market, jacking up prices to maximize profit. So when I got elected, I worked with Republicans to pass a bill that capped insulin copays in the state of Texas at $25 per prescription. Then Joe Biden and Kamala Harris capped insulin at $35 for Medicare recipients. We've done good work fighting Big Pharma. But Project 2025 threatens to undo that progress. If Trump wins, he's going to let Big Pharma jack up prices again. But as Vice President Harris says, we are not going back. So this is not just about public schools, it's also about our health care. These are the stakes in this election. That district that I was campaigning in was a Trump district. it voted for Donald Trump 2 years before I ran. And I flipped that district. Not just with Democrats, but with independents and Republicans too. So I want to, before I close, I want to share some insights from what I learned flipping a red district. I think it'll be relevant to the work y'all are doing here in Wichita Falls. Democrats too often think that people vote with their brains, and they don't. People vote with their hearts and their gut. Our policy proposals are important, but Democrats, we've got to get better about talking about our values. The Republican Party claims to be the party of freedom, family, and faith. But you can't be the party of freedom and control women's bodies. You can't be the party of family and love your guns more than our kids. And you can't be the party of faith and worship at the feet of Donald Trump. The Republican Party is not the party of freedom, family, and faith. They are the party of bullies, bigots, and billionaires. And it's why we have to defeat them this November. And with all of you, with these amazing candidates that we have here today, and with Colin Allred at the top of our ticket in Texas, and with Kamala Harris at the top of our ticket nationwide, I am confident that we are going to move this beautiful state and this beautiful country forward this November. Thank you all for having me. Thank you for listening. God bless you.
What a speaker, huh? Yeah. Thank you. Again, James, thank you. Up next to speak with us today, we have State Board of Education candidate Morgan Kirkpatrick coming to talk and explain what State Board of Education is. So.
Thank you for having me, and I just have to say that it's unfair for anybody to have to follow. Hi, I am Morgan Kirkpatrick. I am running for State Board of Education in District 15, and I have followed Representative Talarico for the last several years because, like me, he is a fellow former middle school teacher. I was born and raised in Lubbock. I graduated from Lubbock Christian University and started teaching middle school at age 22. I thought that was going to be my lifelong career. I love reading books with students and discussing the thoughts that come from those books. And the pandemic was the beginning of the end for my career. And looking back now, I can see it. But in the midst, all I saw was a chance for Texas to reimagine public education. And instead, policymakers, decision makers at every level seem to double down on the things that we know don't work for students, like standardized testing and teaching to the test, whitewashing history, and banning books. When I left teaching in 2022, I had over 600 books in my classroom library. And that was the year after a state legislator had passed around a list of about 850 books that he deemed needed to be pulled from libraries because of racial discussions and LGBTQ issues. If a child wants to read a book to learn about the world around them, to learn about other people, to me that is one of the most powerful ways that anybody can learn, but especially kids. And so to take books away from students when we all have a computer in our hand is insane to me. So after I left teaching, I joined the Texas Democratic Women of the South Plains and became a voter deputy registrar. I worked the last two November election days, and I would urge every single person in this room, if you have the time and ability, reach out to your local elections office because they are in dire need of help. I know in Lubbock, we had several of our voting locations that were likely to be closed if we didn't get enough poll workers. And so working in the community in that way gave me new insight, and I've met so many amazing people, and I want to say closeted Democrats, because Lubbock is very similar to the situation here in Wichita Falls, and there are more of us than we realize, and if every single one of us spoke up a little bit more and had those difficult conversations with the people around us, teachers most of all, if teachers would have the conversations about what's going on at the state legislature and who we're voting for and why we're voting for certain people, I feel like we could move mountains. And so while I know it's hard and you don't want to lose friendships or you don't want to disrupt relationships, I feel like we owe it to our students. We owe it to the diabetics in the room. We owe it to all of the people who are going to lose in November, not just the candidates, but the public. And so please have those tough conversations. I also want to advocate for those candidates in the room because it is hard to run for public office. I'm a teacher, I'm not a politician. And so I wanted to tell you a little bit about my district. It covers 87 counties, from the entire Panhandle to Wichita Falls, down to Abilene and Brady, over to Midland, Odessa. And so I'm trying to meet with different groups in the county parties. I'm also meeting with teachers groups because the State Board of Education is kind of an unknown to a lot of people. And so the governor appoints the commissioner of TEA, who is officially the executive secretary of the State Board of Education. And so there are mainly 4 big responsibilities, including approval of curriculum standards, so the things that students are required to know before they graduate, the things that teachers are required to teach in their classrooms, as well as approval of instructional materials. And on that note, I will urge every single person in this room to pay attention to the next SBOE meeting, which will be September 10th through 13th, because they will be discussing House Bill 1605, which covers the instructional materials that are, for the reading section is for grades K through 5 and includes religious texts. And so I watched the June meeting, it was the House committee meeting for the Public Education Committee, and Representative Talarico's questioning of Mike Morath was spot on, because he pointed out the hypocrisy in the way they have chosen to include religious texts in these lessons. And so, curriculum standards, instructional materials, overseeing the permanent school fund. My opponent, who is an oil and gas guy in Midland, and is also supported by Tim Dunn, and was appointed as board chair by Greg Abbott last December, decided to defund $8.5 billion of the permanent school fund from BlackRock because of ESGs and supporting economically sustainable, environmentally sustainable energy sources. And so it's little decisions like that, or keeping the Native American Indigenous Studies course off of the agenda for it to be reviewed and hopefully approved, like Mexican American Studies in 2018 or African American Studies in 2020. So there are things that the SBOE oversees that we all need to know about and pay attention to. And so while there are so many issues that deserve our attention, I hope that every single one of us will vote with public education at the top of mind in November. And support your local candidates, because it's not an easy job, and while we are all ecstatic about the top of the ticket with Harris and Waltz and Colin Allred, the local races impact your day-to-day life more so than any of the other races. And so please, please, please support your local candidates. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much, Morgan. Thank you. Okay, so next up on our list, we have our very own Walter Coppage. I just want to say a few things about Walter before you come up here. This is not my first time working with Walter through an election. We did it last time too. This time we're coming with more force. And Walter is such an advocate for public schools. Walter is very passionate about it. And in this area, that's what we need. We need someone that is going to be advocating for our kids. So, if you haven't donated to Walter yet, please do that because we need to send him to Austin, okay? So, without further ado, Walter Coppage.
Secret harder being third. My name is Walter Coppage, and I'm running for State Representative District 69. I'm a collection of many things. I'm a son, an older brother, a husband, a stepfather, a father, a friend, a pilot, a certified public accountant, a businessman, a Presbyterian, a Democrat, a Rotarian, and a music lover. In 1978, just before I turned 28 years old, and a year after Mary Helen and I got married, Texas Monthly ran a story about the worst jobs in Texas. They ranged from blast furnace tender to munitions plant worker to rendering plant worker. And because of the weather in Wichita Falls, scorching hot in the summer, freezing cold with ice and snow in the winter, and tornadoes, and more tornadoes, full-time resident of Wichita Falls was listed in the list of worst jobs in Texas. That's me. A full-time resident of Wichita Falls. I was born and raised in Wichita Falls, and I went to public schools in Wichita Falls and graduated from Midwestern State University. The Texas Monthly story was 6 months before the biggest tornado of all, the terrible Tuesday tornado on April 10th, 1979. The tornado began around 5:50 p.m. and moved east-northeast with a 1.5-mile swath through Wichita Falls, destroying homes and neighborhoods and schools along the way. My daughter Stacy's school was hit, and Ben Milam students spent the rest of their school year at Cunningham with school in the afternoon while Cunningham students went to school in the morning. How the community came to help their neighbors through the disaster brought back the city's motto, the city that faith built. What are the schools like? That's what everyone asks when they think about moving to a new town. It helps you decide if you want to take the job offer. It helps you decide what neighborhood to start looking for housing in, and if you want to buy or rent. Schools are the hub of the community. If school vouchers are signed into law, and even more money is taken from underfunded public schools, what will happen? Will your school be able to attract the top teachers? Will your school be able to afford band uniforms and instruments? Will your school be able to offer college credit courses? Will some rural schools be forced to close and have your kids ride a bus an hour a day because of consolidation? What will that do to your hometown? Will it wither and die without public schools? For me, public education is job number one. We need to stop school vouchers or school choice or education savings accounts or whatever the next name is for it. We need to fully fund public schools. We need to raise teacher pay so that teachers don't have to take second jobs. We need to raise teacher retirement annuities to enable a teacher that doesn't receive Social Security to have a modest retirement after sometimes 40 years in the classroom teaching our kids. We need to allow teachers to use their skills learned over decades to teach students that we know learn differently instead of teaching to a damn test. Teachers deserve our respect after decades of being taken for granted. Republicans have controlled the state of Texas for 30 years, and our schools have been underfunded for 30 years. The Republicans in leadership aren't worried about educating Texas children.
You better say it.
They are interested in their propaganda that involves banning books, denigrating public education, and how they want their Christian nationalism views accepted by every Texan. It's a much darker agenda than we ever thought. School vouchers are going to mainly help families who already have their kids in private school. Vouchers will not help the rest of us. Private schools will continue to pick the cream of the crop, the best of the best, for acceptance. They have the choice because they can turn your child down for any reason. Public schools take everyone. They take special ed kids, kids with 504 plans, kids with disabilities, kids with discipline issues, and kids with rough home lives. What happens when these kids no longer have access to public schools, closed for lack of funding? What kind of future can they hope for? Tax cuts and vouchers won't bring innovation and growth to Texas, but a generation of students with a fully funded public education will. Recently, I sent out letters asking for votes and asking for contributions to my campaign. I received checks, and I also received a letter on the back of my letter from a voter. read a lot of it to you. I know quite a few people who send their kids to Wichita Christian School, and they are far from wealthy. They make sacrifices elsewhere to afford it. I believe they prefer a narrow Christian path to the politically charged atmosphere creeping into public schools, where parents' rights are minimized and the curriculum has swayed away from the 3 R's to a more sexually oriented base. Keep the LGBTQ out of public schools and you'll see a return to public schools. Everyone has a right to live their lives the way they choose without ridicule, including Christians. Simply put, I think that people are weary of a few people trying to tell a lot of people what to accept. Of course, this is my opinion and you're entitled to yours. That upset me for a while. Tim Dunn of Midland and Farris Wilks of Cisco don't share my views of Christianity. They want everyone in Texas, Christian, atheist, agnostic, Muslim, Catholic, Jewish, Hindu, Buddhist, and everyone else to attend a Christian private school with a very narrow Christian nationalist teaching. They want and expect the viewpoint of 7 Mountain Mandate to become our country. They want Christians and only Christians to oversee religion, family, education, media, arts and entertainment, business, and government. As I've said recently, there are 2 great commandments of Jesus Christ. Love the Lord your God and love your neighbor. They go together if we do one, but not the other. We risk not being heard in heaven. I believe that everyone is my neighborhood. He's my neighbor. Everyone. That is why Christian nationalist teaching discriminates. They don't love their neighbor when their neighbor isn't like them. When their neighbor is a different color, nationality, ethnicity, or is LGBTQ. They don't love their neighbor. Theirs is a very narrow version of being Christian that I don't hold to. Everything these days is harder than it could be if the state government could help a little. Texas entered this biennial legislative session with a $32.7 billion surplus. Public schools received no increase in funding because school vouchers were defeated in the last special session. Governor Abbott retaliated by withholding any additional funding. After teachers worked overtime during the COVID pandemic, you would think teachers could have gotten a raise with part of the budget surplus. They didn't. The plan of the leaders of Texas, Republicans all, is to give billionaires Tim Dunn of Midland and Farris Wilks of Cisco what they want, which is to eliminate public education and require every Texas student to attend a private Christian school. Why? Because they think that God told them to make that happen. Because they have the money to buy politicians. Because they asked Governor Abbott to make it happen. If you want to hear Tim Dunn and Farris Wilks yourself, go to YouTube and watch Deep in the Pockets of Texas by CNN. Or read Texas Monthly's story, The Billionaire Bully Who Wants to Turn Texas into a Christian Theocracy. If vouchers are passed, you can't in the bottle. You can't get back to where you started. Our state budget will skyrocket over school vouchers as it has in Arizona, where they are having to eliminate water projects in Arizona and highway projects because too much money is now being spent on school vouchers. School vouchers were offered to families who already had their kids in private schools because those families made that choice. At various times, I've had my kids in private schools. I didn't ask the state to pay the bill. That was a choice my family made at the time. And by the way, both my kids are public school teachers. Scotty's out here somewhere. My daughter teaches down at Keller, Fossil Ridge. My two sisters are retired Texas teachers. My mother was a teacher. My uncles were teachers. My aunts were teachers. I don't know why I'm not a teacher. After the healthcare systems in Texas were stretched to the bone during the COVID pandemic, you would think that Medicaid expansion would have been allowed to pass in Texas, covering millions of mostly rural Texans. Republican leaders are not interested in your health care, only theirs. The federal government would send $900,000 to Texas for every $100,000 that Texas spends covering health care. That is a great deal. Recommended by the Perryman Group, a leading economic consulting firm that I've been following for 30 years, and the Texas Hospital Association. Did the Republicans consider it? No. Ask yourself why not. Slowly but surely, the Republican-led Texas legislature is killing rural Texas and every Texan that wasn't born into a wealthy family. When I talk about the Republican leadership in Texas, I'm talking about a different kind of Republican. There's a difference in a Rotary Club Rotarian that is my friend, and who is on my flag team, putting out flags on holidays. The Republican leadership in Texas wants to destroy public education to fulfill the wishes of Christian nationalist billionaires who want every student to go to a private Christian school. In the Houston Independent School District that the state of Texas is now running due to supposed low scores at one or two schools, students go home to families that speak different languages than English. Up to 160 different languages. Houston is the world's most international city, and with that title comes challenges in public schools. But now the state is closing libraries and laying off librarians to save money. I'm sorry, but that's back-assward way to raise academic schools. During the Republican primary, Governor Abbott spent campaign donations from wealthy billionaires to defeat rural Republicans and had joined with Democrats to defeat school vouchers. Billboards read, "True Conservative." There is nothing conservative about trying to destroy public education by underfunding it for decades and finally trying to kill public education by passing school vouchers. I am running for state representative District 69 because voters deserve a choice when they cast their ballots. Throughout my life, I have been presented with opportunities, sometimes disguised as problems. Texas has big problems, but we can learn from them and work to fix them. We can come together like Wichita Falls did after the terrible Tuesday tornado and help each other. When that happens, Texans can stand tall and proud. Go to my website, Walter Coppage for Texas, to see my views, and donate through Act Blue, and vote to make a difference. Thank you.
Wow, talk about following a speech. Y'all know, that was very good. Thank you, Walter. Before we get on to our last speaker of the night, I did want to recognize we do have another candidate here. Dale, will you stand up? This is Dale Frey. He is running for Senate District 30.
Yes.
Senate District 30. So you might live there, you might not. Wichita Falls is split in half, so check it out. Okay, and before we have Deandra Chenault up here, I do want to talk about local elections. Like Morgan said, your local elections affect you more than anything. And I think that a part of the problem that we have in this country, in this state, we focus on the top of the ticket entirely too much. And yes, it's important, but the bottom of the ticket is going to affect you the most. So, that being said, I want to introduce our candidate for County Commissioner Precinct 3, Deandra Chenault.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Wichita County Association and guests. I would like to thank you all for allowing me this opportunity to come to speak to you today. A little bit about me. I was born and raised in Wichita Falls. I attended and graduated from Wichita Falls High School and then went off to college to Jarvis Christian College, where I received my bachelor's degree in criminal justice. I have training and experience from serving as the former Wichita Falls City Councilor and Mayor Pro Tem for District 2 from 2015 until 2021. I also served on several boards and committees and was appointed for Vice President and President of Texas Municipal League for Region 5. So you might ask, why am I running for County Commissioner? Because there is time for a change. And there are no term limits at the county. And my opponent has been in the seat for 15 years. So that's why there's time for a change. There's also time for new ideals, fresh blood, and for someone that is going to serve the seat and also is going to be there for the people and show up when they need you. And these are just a few things that I would like to bring to the table. One, I believe as an elected official, we should be more engaged and committed to our city, our county, and the people of the county that we serve. I also want to make sure that on the north side of town, that there are voting centers for early voting and election day that are closer to their neighborhoods. Also, to have additional veterans resources. This is a military town, and also speaking to some veterans, they said that we need a specialty clinic here for veterans, so that's something I would like to try to work on also. And then also to have more town hall meetings for transparency, I don't know if you've been watching the news, but they're having some issues with money that came up missing back in December, and that's just now coming out in August. And it was almost $8,000 that has not been accounted for, and no one has been held accountable yet. Also to work with the city and school board and the Chamber of Commerce to have quarterly meetings where we can work together as a community and to help each other out. And my last thing is, when you go to the polls November 5th, it's no votes, no voice, vote Chenault.
Thank you, Deandra. Okay, so I don't have any other speakers planned. What I do have to say is we have this place until 6. What?
Madam Chair, could we maybe ask candidate Bryce? Yes. Since he's here?
Dale, do you have anything you want to say?
Oh, I mean, if you'll let me,
Come on.
Oh, okay.
How you guys doing? Sorry, I wasn't expecting people to talk today, but hi, my name is Dale Frey, and I'm running to be your next Texas State Senator for District 30, which is just about, in the Wichita Falls area, that's more the southeast portion, but it's a big, massive area that is 11 counties in size, so it's a big hurdle. It's gonna be real fun. Anyways, to tell you who I am, my wife and I came back down here to Texas to be with her father when he got stage 3 cancer, which is gonna segue to the many reasons I'm running for office. I really, really want to fix our broken healthcare system down here. One of the first warning signs I got when I came down here about how bad things are is meeting a friend of mine, a woman named Kenneth, who is a healthcare provider, particularly for assisted living, and she's ranted to me over a cup of coffee how she's not going to go out of business as long as she drops her Medicaid recipients. Because she says the Medicaid rates are just not, the money's just not there anymore. She says the rates have not been adjusted since long before the pandemic, and inflation's killing her in the sector. And this is so frustrating because we're not part of the Medicaid expansion program. I sometimes lose people when I talk about that, but just to make sure that we all understand, the Medicaid expansion program is a program we all spend money into. It's a national money bucket we pay through our federal taxes. And money flows from this national money bucket to California and New Jersey, but not back here, because we're one of the few states that's not opted into the Medicaid expansion program. You would think that this should really agitate fiscal conservatives to think that we're paying for medical programs in California, but not back here. But that's actually what's going on. Meanwhile, Cadet, this friend of mine, is having to drop her Medicaid recipients because this is what's happening. And this affects people's lives. It affects my father-in-law, especially as a retired public school teacher. I was shocked to find out how little amount of money public school teachers make in retirement. I don't know how he would have made it if my wife and I didn't come back around here to be with him. I was shocked to find out how little amount of money public school teachers make before they retire. Vicky, another friend of mine, told me how much money she made as a public school teacher in the Frisco area, at Frisco ISD. And when she told me that, I said, my God, Vicky, that's the same amount of money I made in my first job at college. This is ridiculous. Our schools are under attack. It's under attack. And I'm thankful for the previous speakers to bring up Christian nationalism. If you want to go home and you want some real cringe, look up NAR, New Apostolic Reformation, and then look up Seven Mountain Dominionism. And to think that that is what the 2 top donors in Texas believe and also preach is scary. Our schools are under attack, and we need to elect representatives who will support our schools and try to fix our broken healthcare system. Anyways, my name is Dale Frey. You can learn more about me from going to freyfortexas.com. It's F-R-E-Y for Texas.com, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Oh, New Apostolic Reformation and Seven Mountain Dominionism.
So when it comes to So when we talk about Christian nationalism, I know that's a big term and it's confusing, and Christian nationalism is a big umbrella that contains a lot of different types of theologies. Back in the 1960s, there was something called the New Apostolic Reformation. And now this is a twisted version of Christianity. It changes the end times theology within Christianity. New Apostolic Reformationists and Seven Mountain Dominionists do not necessarily believe in a tribulation period, nor do they believe in a rapture. Instead, they believe that, like in Seven Mountain, let me back up. With New Apostolic Reformation, the world has to be made a perfect place in order to summon Jesus Christ back down for the second coming. New Apostolic Reformation, I don't believe necessarily says what you need to do in order to cause the second coming of Jesus, but that's where Seven Mountain Dominionism comes in. The Seven Mountain Mandate says what does need to be done in order to bring on the second coming. So it's not Christianity. And when James Talarico comes through and says that Christian nationalism is not Christianity, if anything, when you look at NAR and New Apostolic Reformation, and you look at Seven Mountain Dominionism, that is completely heretical to the Bible. There is nowhere in the Bible that talks about new apostles coming into the world, which is another aspect to NAR. It says that there'll be new apostles that come here, and this is completely against the scriptures in the Bible. So it's crazy to think that this is what Tim Dunn Farris Wilks, or at least I know Farris Wilks, I believe is the preacher who preaches this stuff. And it's very alarming to think that Farris Wilks, I believe he considers himself to be a Torah teacher. And when he says that people like Joe Strauss should not be able to hold office because he's Jewish, is absolutely insane if you consider yourself to be a Torah teacher. So those are two, I would call them subsections to Christian nationalism. It's not to say that NAR and the Seven Mountain Mandate is all of Christian nationalism, but it's the two subdivisions of Christian nationalism that alarms me the most, mainly because one of the two most powerful people in Texas believe that way. I believe Congresswoman Lauren Boebert is also a Seven Mountain Dominionist, and I believe the congressional speaker, Mike Johnson, is as well. So, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I just have a few announcements that I want to make myself before I leave everyone to their own devices. If you are here, if you're new, you don't know anybody, everybody, do not leave until you meet someone that you have never met before. The only way that we're going to make a difference is if we form a community together. So extroverts, adopted introverts. Seriously, because some of these people are not going to introduce themselves. Extroverts, we have to do that. Also, you may have noticed these nice little pineapples on the table. If you are at a table and you would like a pineapple, fight with the rest of the table and take it with you. Please don't take the glasses. I know that there are a couple of pairs of glasses that belong personally to someone, so if you can leave the glasses but take the pineapple, duke it out, have it out, take a pineapple. Also, you may notice on the table, there are little cats, okay? These little cats have also been donated, so if you find yourself being a catless child lady, take yourself one of those little cats, and again, you can duke it out with your table. Thank you all again for coming. Take your ladies home. Please, if you want to get more involved, as always, contact me. I would love the help. So, thank you, and y'all have a great rest of your